And welcome back to Business Spotlight. I'm your host, Patrick Dewar. We've got a great show going today. Today we're talking about how to play guitar. My guest, Brad Barnes, BradBarnesPresents.com, has a solution for your teenager to the adult that wants to learn how to play guitar. As you're hearing, it's him in the background playing just a little bit of an example of how technical he really takes it in playing guitar. One of the things that you really want to pay attention to is that Brad has done everything from from the beginner all the way to sharing stages with others, creating other masters of playing guitar. And that's one of the things that I'm really thankful about, is because you're getting somebody that can really help you learn how to play and play efficiently. Brad, I'm so thankful for you being on the show.
Thanks, Pat.
You bet. So as we go into this third section, one of the things that I really want to cover this time is who really will benefit the most. Who's going to benefit the most, Brad, from this type of material?
Well, I mean, really the question is who wouldn't benefit the most from it, because there's quite a few people out there that I've been around guitar for a very long time, and my passion has really been teaching every bit as much as it's been performing. And there are a few limitations. I don't cover a lot of classical guitar, in fact, almost none. And then I don't cover any left-handed guitar playing. But that's, so if you want to learn how to play right-handed, even if you're left-handed, and you don't really want to do too much of the classical thing, those are pretty much the only things that would not be covered here. For everyone else, there's something for everybody. And there's actually a lot for everybody. I've been around players. Let me talk about the intermediate section for just a moment. I've been around a lot of players. I used to host open mics, and I've tried to help a lot of students get to the point where they can go out and they can perform.
Right.
Now, open mics you're not getting paid for, but they still you've got to get started somewhere.
Sure.
And there's a lot of issues that keep tripping up so many different people, and I kept running into the same things that people would ask me over and over and over again. Now, I was fortunate enough to be exposed to this in college, and for some reason my mind just was able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But what I wanted to do was bridge that gap so that everyone could put the pieces of this puzzle together. And I wanted to make sure that these people that wanted to be able to go out there and perform, to play in bands, and whether it's garage bands or some original rock band that wanted to go out there and play a club, or they wanted to play open mics, or they just wanted to be able to get together with their friends but really be able to play music that sounds like music. Well, that's what I did. There's so many different details that, in fact, I would consider the intermediate section kind of a buffet, because so many people are coming from so many different places that this is the section, the intermediate section, where people can go and they can just go to this section or this segment. They can go to that segment. They can go to this lesson. They can go to that lesson. Or they can watch the entire thing, which I do recommend, even though it is somewhere around 9 hours in length. But it answers so many of these questions that is going to allow people from all different backgrounds to be able to answer those questions and move on to the next level. That's exactly what it's there for.
Well, one of the things, they've got a slide on that, on intermediate guitar with Brad Barnes. Yeah, that's it. So, in looking at that, some of the things that you highlight are 12 majors and minor keys. You talk about...
Now, that's only a little bit of what's on there. Now, let me talk about this. Music is actually historical. It wasn't like it was a group of people that got together and decided and made up a set of rules. In other words, there's a history behind it, and so because of that, I included what I call music history in a nutshell there. That goes back to Pythagoras, who was the Greek mathematician that actually came up with the first mathematical formulas for stringed instruments. And then I go through the rise of Christianity and the Roman Empire, because they destroyed all the old pagan music and they started over, and that was a critical moment in Western music history, where if you ever study in college, that's a very big moment. And then this kind of rebuilds from there. And the reason I kind of go through that, and it's not a long segment, but I want people to understand that what they're learning, there's a history, there's a historical context to it. And so if they kind of keep that in mind, then when I go on and I teach key signatures, I teach what all the notes are and major and minor scales, and also how the chords are derived from those scales. Because the chords that they're learning, there's a system to how all these pieces fit together. And I wanted to make sure I went into a lot of detail on that, but also from a guitar standpoint so that they understand the things that are important to them.
Right.
Not going off in all these wild directions, but I want them to really have a sense of understanding on what it is that they're learning and how to apply it to their rock music or their country music or their funk music or whatever.
I think it's a real key too, is that they're learning how to apply this history, so to speak, and these lessons that have already been learned. And now you're just bringing it down into a focus where somebody can take that and insert those pieces into their own style so they can really come out with something that's original and that's lively and that's entertaining. Because ultimately you're either playing for yourself or you're playing for someone else eventually, and that's going to make the difference. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, absolutely. And most of this, after you learn this, most of the intermediate section is actually how do you apply this in the fretboard. I go into the cage system, which is a system on how to organize the fretboard in all 12 keys, in major and minor, up and down the fretboard.
Right.
I go in how you actually superimpose scales on top of that, and including pentatonic scales and arpeggios, and how you can actually use that to come up with your own chord voicings and your own riffs. And also, I'll go into how to read a chord chart, for instance. I go into 12-bar blues form, and how do you solo over the 12-bar blues and make it sound like a solo, not like you're noodling with a bunch of scales. and that's important because that trips a lot of people up. And then, and also modes, which seems to be mysterious, which is actually the medieval church modes, speaking of the music history. But how do you make it sound like the mode? And I actually go into all that detail.
That's great, that's great. Well, I know we got one more section, and I want to get into exactly how to connect with you in the next section. We'll be right back in just a few minutes, a few seconds, and then we'll have this last section with Brad Barnes on BradBarnesPresents.com, learning how to play guitar. Thanks.